Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you. Welcome back to our global conference on women and cybersecurity. Before we move further with our agenda, I would like to give you a glimpse of our morning session. We had a fantastic inaugural session by our honorable guest, Eric Fall, Director and UNESCO representative of Bhutan, India, Maldives, and Sri Lanka, followed by Meenakshi Lekhi, Member of the Parliament, along with an inspirational talk by our Swamini Amma, Swamini Krishna Amrita Prana from Mata Amridandamai Mad, demonstrating Amma's teaching in a soulful way. We also had a talk by our Dean of PG Programs, Dr. Krishna Sri Achudan, who gave an overview of our vision and mission here at Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. We also had a keynote session from Marion Mashlek from Black Hoodie, along with Rinki Sethi from Twitter, followed by Shantru Mishra from Anilam Pharmaceuticals and Ratnamoli Gorik Dinda from National Information Center, who all gave their inspirational talk how they had succeeded in the field of cybersecurity and their experience within the field. So let's follow with our agenda for today. I am here to introduce you to Ms. Renu Diaz, Penetration Test Engineer at Schneider Electric. Ms. Renu has an overall experience of 2.5 years within the industries, mainly focusing on embedded, wireless, and web security. She is also a certified ethical hacker and cybersecurity enthusiast, mainly in the field of ICS and IIoT security. Today, she is here with us to talk on understanding Bluetooth security. And I am really looking forward in seeing Renu speak with us today with ShaktiCon. We are extremely honored to have you here with us, Renu. So welcome aboard. To all the participants, I urge you to keep your questions ready and please feel free to drop them in the chat so that Renu can get back with us after the session. So over to you, Renu.
Yes,
Yes,
I
it is
hope
visible
it
now.
should be visible. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So
Okay.
yeah. Lastly, as a bonus, we'll have a quick demonstration on one of the attack scenarios, which we will discuss in the next section. So yeah, what is BLE? So BLE stands for Bluetooth Low Energy, and it's a widely used wireless protocol standard designed and marketed by Bluetooth Special Interest Group, which is mainly aimed at applications such as healthcare, fitness, home, entertainment industries, etc. So speaking about few of the features of Bluetooth, so it operates in 2.4 gigahertz range, which is same as the other 802.11 protocol standards, wireless protocol standards, and the data rate it provides is up to maximum of 1 Mbps. So the range of communication can extend a maximum up to 100 meters, and low power consumption is one of the key highlights of Bluetooth Low Energy as a protocol. So Bluetooth, unlike Bluetooth Classic, so basically the Bluetooth protocol is divided into various subcategories, and Bluetooth Classic and Bluetooth Low Energy are two different categories under Bluetooth. So how is it different from Bluetooth Classic? So before Bluetooth Low Energy, it was Bluetooth Classic, which was predominantly used in most of the consumer electronic devices. So how is it different from Bluetooth Classic? So Bluetooth Classic is used in applications where continuous data streaming is required. So say example, our Bluetooth speakers and Bluetooth wireless speakers and other consumer electronic devices where continuous streaming of data is required and low power consumption is not an option there. So we have Bluetooth Low Energy where we can use this in application where we're not continuously streaming the data, but we have a requirement to just poll the data at some intervals of time. So at that time, Bluetooth Low Energy is a feasible option, which also provides us low power consumption and helps us save the power. And it was introduced as a part of Bluetooth 4.0. So before Bluetooth 4.0 version, it was mainly Bluetooth Classic. So from 4.0, it was along with Bluetooth Classic, Bluetooth Low Energy was introduced. So why is it important to speak about Bluetooth Low Energy? So let us understand this with a few facts and figures. So Bluetooth low energy target markets. So speaking about the target markets where Bluetooth low energy is widely being used. So it is used in most of the sports, fitness, and health and wellness consumer electronic devices, which we widely used these days. It is also used in buildings and automation and smart cities. So uh, here Bluetooth devices, BLE devices are a integral part of the larger IoT network. So it is also widely used in industrial automation. So that means so BLE devices have a significant importance when it comes to industrial control system solutions. So having said that, if we look at the right hand side, there's a graphical representation on trends set by Bluetooth low energy devices in consumer electronics. So Bluetooth low energy, it shows BLE enabled devices shipments continue to increase with no sign of slowing down. So by 2024, annual Bluetooth enabled device shipments is expected to exceed 6.2 billion. Uh, with this rapid increase in the usage of BLE devices and its incorporation in ICS and IoT networks, so let's understand the cyber attack patterns in ICS and IoT solutions and why is it important to consider Bluetooth security. So here is an interesting fact about the attack patterns in ICS and IoT networks. So this is a graphical representation provided by a research by Kaspersky. So it says, so be it buildings and automation where IoT is very prevalent, or be it other ICS sectors like oil and gas, automotive manufacturing, energy, etc. So there is a continuous increase in the attack trends in most of these sectors. So as the graph says, so it is continuously increasing every year. So this is mainly based from the mid of 2019 to 2020. So research trends say that attacks are continuously increasing in all the sectors, almost all the sectors, which makes it important. So this is a continuous increase in the attack trend, and so this is something concerning, and that is why we need to consider ICS or IoT security in general, and also BLE or Bluetooth being a integral part of those solutions. It is very important to consider Bluetooth security. So moving on, before moving into other technical aspects, so let us understand few of the terminologies that we usually come across in Bluetooth communication. So this is regarding the device rules. So in order to understand how BLE works, we need to define some of the terms and concepts at play. So a BLE device is acting either as a central or a peripheral device during its communication. So the peripheral devices often are examples like headphones, fitness trackers, heart rate monitors, etc. So a peripheral device is something which advertises its availability uh, to all the central devices in the range, and asks the central devices to connect with them. Alternatively, a device that connects to or interacts with the peripheral devices are called as central devices. So the examples for this would be our PCs or smartphones, etc. So moving on, so let us understand a little bit about the Bluetooth low energy stack. So it includes layers such as physical layer, link layer, L2 cap, and other protocols such as SMP, ATT, GATT protocol, that is generic attribute protocol, generic GAP protocol, that is generic access profile protocol, and let us discuss each one of this briefly so that we'll understand what are the significance of each of these protocol in Bluetooth communication. So speaking about the physical layer, so the lowermost layer, it is, as already mentioned, BLE operates in 2.4 gigahertz, and the entire spectrum is divided into 40 channels for communication in the physical layer. So this is different, slightly different from that of the Bluetooth Classic, which I've already mentioned, and that is why the Bluetooth Classic devices and Bluetooth Low Energy devices are incompatible uh, to communicate with each other, because the physical layer structure in Bluetooth Classic is structured in such a way that the 2.4 gigahertz band is divided into 80 different channels, and the hopping sequence varies in the Bluetooth Classic, and the hopping patterns in the physical layer are different with 40 channels. That is what it makes it incompatible between the Bluetooth Low Energy and Bluetooth Classic for communication. So coming to the 40 channels, so how are they divided, and how are the different channels used? So out of the 40 channels, so three channels, that is number 37, 38, and 39, are used for only for advertising purpose. So these three channels are used by the peripheral devices as discussed in the last slide. So peripheral devices, what they do is they keep on sending the advertisement packets, telling the central devices about their presence. So that happens only in channel number 37, 38, and 39. So rest of the channels, that is 0 to 36, are data channels. So the actual data transfer between the master and slave happens between these channels. So master and slave hops between various different channels between 0 to 36 to communicate with each other. So that is how physical layer is structured in BLE. So coming to the link layer. So link layer, the packet format of link layer is as follows. So the first byte is the preamble. It is a 1 byte data, which is mainly used for synchronization before the start of the communication. This 1 byte preamble is mainly used for synchronization between the transmitter and the receiver. So, and then comes the 4 byte access address. So access address is something which is used by the devices to identify each other while communication. So if one central device needs to communicate with a peripheral device, it has to know its access address. So that is how devices identify each other in Bluetooth Low Energy. So the next one is PDU. PDU stands for Protocol Data Unit. So this is a section where our actual data is transmitted. So the data might range between 2 to 257 bytes. And lastly comes the CRC checksum, that is of 3 bytes. So as we all know, CRC is something which is used for integrity check on the communication. So it makes sure the data is not changed during the course of communication. And then comes the third layer, that is L2 cap. So L2 CAP stands for the Logical Link Control and Adaptation Protocol, and it plays an important role in the BLE stack. So it is responsible for breaking down a large packet of information from the upper layers into manageable BLE chunks, which are usually of 27 bytes, and also it is also helps in combining the smaller BLE packets into a larger packet while sending it to the upper layers. So having said that, let us see what SMP protocol does. So SMP stands for Security Manager Protocol. So Security Manager, it acts as a security algorithm as well as a protocol. So the responsibility of this layer is to assist the device in generating and exchanging security keys to establish an encrypted communication channel. And coming to the next layer or the next protocols is the GAP and the GATT protocol. So GAP stands for Generic Access Profile and GATT stands for Generic Attribute Protocol. So what are the significance of these two in BLE communication? So generic access profile is something which is responsible for connection and advertising in BLE. So before the communication is established. So as already mentioned, peripheral devices advertise themselves. So all this process is taken care by generic access profile protocol, and GAP is responsible for the visibility of a device in the external world and also plays a major role in determining how devices interact with each other. Coming to GATT, so GATT stands for Generic Attribute Protocol. So Generic Attribute Protocol uses so this is Generic Attribute Protocol. So it uses Attribute Protocol as its transport level protocol, and then transmits the actual data. So the data is whatever the data is transmitted in BLE is categorized into services and characteristics. So what is the significance of service and characteristics? So whenever you try sniffing a Bluetooth communication, so this is all what you see, that is service, characteristics, etc. So it is important to know what exactly these are and how these are related to the actual data that is being transmitted. So as already mentioned, BLE uses a hierarchical data structure to define the information exchange. So these attributes are defined using the GATT protocol. So here comes the characteristic value and the service. So characteristic is something. It is. It might be a say it might be a value which is monitoring your heart rate, or it might be a value which is monitoring your temperature. So such common attributes are collectively such common attributes are called as characteristics, and they are collectively, so same kind of attributes are collectively called as a service. So taking example of this, so say we have fitness trackers or Fitbits these days. So they are used for various purposes. So one might be health monitoring purpose. So if we consider health monitoring as a service, so the characteristics that might come under this that health monitoring service are: first one is, as already mentioned, it might be body temperature, or it might be pulse rate of the person, etc. So that is how characteristic and services are defined. So one more example can be, so if you are managing your fitness, so fitness monitoring. So fitness monitoring, if it is a service, so number of calories burned per day can be one of the characteristics under fitness monitoring service, and number of hours that a person has worked out can be another characteristic. So the value of these characteristics keeps on changing. So that is how data is managed or data is transmitted in BLE protocol. So coming to the BLE security mechanisms. So BLE security mechanisms, so here we'll be looking at few of the security mechanisms that are inbuilt as a part of the BLE protocol standard. So we'll be discussing about three main aspects here, that is pairing, encryption, and privacy. How is it provided by BLE, and is it really secure enough to protect us against the cyber attacks? So the first one is pairing. So pairing is somewhat equivalent to the authentication we perform in other devices, and encryption is something which helps us to maintain the confidentiality of our communication. So before going ahead with the types of pairing and the types of encryption that is provided in BLE protocol, sorry, let us understand how this pairing and encryption works in general in BLE. So say there is a smart lock and a device, your phone, which you are communicating to the smart lock. So as already mentioned, so this is a peripheral device which keeps sending its advertisement packets to the central device, say our smartphones. So once this receives the advertisement packets, and if it wants to connect to this smart lock, so the next step that happens would be a pairing request and response. So pairing request is something where we as a user provide the authentication sequence. So it might be a pass key, or it might be a password, or any other authentication mechanism that has been implemented. So we give that, and we get a pairing response from the peripheral device in return. There are a lot of pairing mechanisms implemented in BLE and in various versions. So let us see that in the next section. But for now, after the pairing process is completed, what happens is, so based on whatever the pass key or password we have provided, so based on that, it generates some secondary keys. Some like there are some keys like short-term key, long-term key, etc. So what these does is these are in turn used for the encryption, setting up a encrypted channel for communication. So once the encrypted channel is set up, so all the data that is being transferred is confidential. So it uses AES-CCM standard for communication. So which is a pretty good a communication standard in terms of security. It uh, mostly does not have any security flaws. So that means if the BLE security is broken, that is not because of the encryption standard we are using, but it might be because of the pairing mechanisms we are using. Because encryption is already a pretty good one that is being implemented in this protocol standard. So the breaches, all the breaches that happen is mainly because of the pairing mechanism that a developer chooses to implement. So we'll look at it. So how the pairing mechanism actually affects the breaches that happen. So pairing methods. So there are various pairing methods that BLE protocol standard provides. So the first one is so the first three pairing mechanisms, that is just works, passkey entry, and out of band. So these are present in BLE standards 4.0, 4.1, and 4.2. But the last one, that is numeric comparison, is only supported in uh, standards which are after, like from 4.2, BLE 4.2. The numeric comparison is implemented. So how are these different? So JustWorks. So JustWorks is a very bad idea for an authentication mechanism. So JustWorks is almost equivalent to no authentication. So you just you open your app, so you scan for the devices, you find one of the devices, and you just connect. So you don't need any authentication sequence, nothing. So there is no user interaction enforced, apart from obviously it's just the connect thing. And it is susceptible to almost all kind of attacks like sniffing, MITM, jamming, etc. So JustWorks is a very bad idea. So the next one is the passkey entry. So passkey entry is somewhat better than JustWorks, but uh, looking at the various attack patterns happening, it is very easy to brute force. Because so what it uses, what happens is a 6-digit passkey between all 6 zeros to 6 9s are used for authentication. So it is just a 6-digit numerical password kind of thing, which is used for authentication. So this might happen in two ways. It might be displayed on the one of the peripheral devices. So you have to be in the perimeter of the device so that you can see that passcode and enter it. So which is kind of secured, but consider a scenario where this passcode is already predefined. So I have a device for which I have predefined the authentication sequence as all 11111. So in that case, brute force of a 6-digit pin is very easy. So this is susceptible to brute force attacks. The next one is out of band. So out of band is like, here we are transferring the authentication mechanism to some other technology and not Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is not responsible for pairing here, because it uses other mechanisms like NFC, QR code, biometrics, etc. for pairing and authentication. So this is something that is transferred to another mechanism and not within the it is not implemented within the same Bluetooth standard. So again, the security of this solely depends on the third-party authentication mechanism which we are using. So say we are using an NFC standard, and if that NFC standard is strong enough, the pairing mechanism or the authentication is strong enough in that, then only the BLE attacks can be prevented. So it solely depends on the standard of the third-party mechanism which we are using. The last one is the numeric comparison. So numeric comparison, as the name suggests, And yeah, this is the only thing that is supported from Bluetooth 4.2 afterwards. And so in numeric comparison, what happens is both the devices display a same agreed number, uh, and both has to acknowledge on that number. So it is kind of a two-way authentication and considered to be pretty secure compared to the first three mechanisms for pairing. So having said that, so now we are done with the pairing mechanisms that are implemented. So let's see how key exchange. The step two, key exchange takes place. So before that, let us see how these keys are generated. So and how susceptible are they to attacks. So key generation. So key generation. Speaking about key generation, again there are two different categories of key generation. So in legacy pairing, that is 4.0 and 4.1, that is in the first three pairing methods. So key generation works in a different way, and in the last one, that is numeric comparison, key generation works in another in a different way. So how is it different? So legacy pairing. So legacy pairing is something which is usually seen in 4.0 and 4.1. So what happens here is a temporary key is used for pairing. So this temporary key is nothing but the 6-digit key or any of the authentication sequence we are giving to the peripheral device for authentication. So once this temporary key is exchanged between the devices, so the devices come up with the short-term key. So short-term key is generated from the temporary key, and this short-term key is further used for encryption purpose. So again, the susceptibility to attacks here solely depends on the pairing mechanisms we are using. So how exactly that happens? So JustWorks, yes, it is susceptible to sniffing, MITM, and like all the attacks that are there. So JustWorks is susceptible to all of them just because it has no authentication. So passkey is also susceptible to sniffing and MITM because brute force is the easiest option that is possible because it's just a 6-digit key and all 6-digit numeric key. It's not even alphanumeric, so it is easy to brute force and susceptible to attacks. Out of band, again, it is maybe because if you are NFC or the QR code mechanism, whatever you're using for authentication, if that has some kind of flaw, then you are most likely to be your Bluetooth communication is most likely to be breached. And numeric comparison is not susceptible to sniffing and MIT because, yeah, as already mentioned, so it is a two-way authentication mechanism and considered to be pretty secure compared to the other three. And Bluetooth low energy secure connection. So how? So from 4.2, so it is slightly different. The encryption and key generation are slightly different. So how is it different? So no temporary key or short-term key is used here as it is used in legacy pairing. So how does it work without temporary key and a short-term key? So what happens here is it uses elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman algorithm, which is considered to be pretty secure, and both of the devices which are communicating have their own public-private key pair. So they share their keys with each other, and then based on the shared key, they come up with a long-term key. So that long-term key is again obviously encrypted with, using the public keys, and then that long-term key is used to encrypt the further communication in BLE. So this is considered to be pretty secure out of all the mechanisms we have discussed because we are using elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman algorithm, and the thing is the initial steps. So here that is in legacy pairing, what happens is the initial steps, whatever we are doing, are all clear text, and only from here our data is being encrypted. But in the second one, that is low energy secure connection, what happens is since both of the devices already have a public-private keys, so the initial steps are also encrypted, and then using the LTK, the further data exchange is also encrypted. So it is considered to be pretty secure. So that was all about pairing and encryption in BLE. So BLE also provides a unique mechanism for privacy. So how does BLE secure the privacy of a user? So privacy, this prevents identity tracking. So by privacy, I mean, so consider a scenario where you are roaming around the city and you are using a smartwatch or something. So as already mentioned, your smartwatch continuously keeps advertising its availability to all of the devices out there, central devices out there. So your MAC address of your smartwatch is available. It is broadcasted everywhere. So if an attacker keeps a track on the MAC ID or the access address of your smartwatch, and if that is being tracked over a period of time or over a distance in a given area, you are most likely to be tracked. So the privacy mechanism given by BLE prevents this. How does it happen? That is, so advertising packets contain randomly generated MAC addresses disguising the device's identity. So instead of sending the same MAC ID every time while advertising itself, so it sends some randomly generated MAC address behind which the real MAC address is hidden. So, but the next question would be how do an authenticated user or how do a legitimate user come to know the real MAC ID for communication? So so the answer for this is lies in the identity resolution key. So whenever a pairing mechanism happens and during the exchange of the keys, there is something called as identity resolution key, which is also shared between the devices. So this identity resolution key is used to resolve the random addresses to the real MAC addresses. So that is how only the legitimate users come to know the real MAC address, and the normally broadcasted MAC addresses are randomly generated. Sorry. So that was about the security mechanisms in BLE. And now coming to some of the open source tools to try BLE security analysis on. So coming to the hardware, so we have something called as Ubertooth, Microbit, Bluefruit, Low Energy. So these hardware are mainly used for purpose like sniffing a Bluetooth connection, sniffing the Bluetooth communication between two devices, and tampering the data uh, of a Bluetooth communication, etc. So along with whatever hardware you use, so there needs to be some equivalent software. So few of the software that we used are HCI tool, BTLE Jack, BTLE Juice, GAT tool, Gatacker, and NRF Connect is it is a application which can be easily downloaded on any of the Android or iPhones, and Crackle. So NRF Connect doesn't need an external hardware like any of these, but the other tools need an external hardware to be connected whenever you are using it. So Crackle is used to crack the passwords or the authentication sequences that we use. Okay, having said about the open source tools used for BLE security analysis, let us see some of the commonly found attacks in BLE security. So the first one is sniffing or eavesdropping. So sniffing or eavesdropping, as the name suggests, so this can be passive sniffing or active sniffing. So in passive sniffing, what happens is an attacker just sniffs a connection, and he passively monitors what is the communication going on between a master and a slave, or a central and a peripheral device, and he keeps a track on the communication that is going on, which can be further leveraged to perform other attacks. So this is usually done in the initial stage of any attack. And the next one is man in the middle. So as the name suggests, so this is a kind of an active sniffing. So where an attacker not only sniffs the communication, actively sniffs the communication, but he acts as a proxy between the master and the slave. So here he hears everything that is going on between the master and the slave, and he also is able to change the parameters that is being communicated between master and the slave. So that is how MITM works. And then tampering. So tampering is again a mechanism where modification of data is possible, like rewriting the characteristics values, or rewriting this services, like sniffing the services and rewriting the services. So one example of this would be, so consider there is an ICS solution which is using Bluetooth enabled sensors to monitor the temperatures. So they have set some threshold value for temperature in that solution uh, to be monitored. And if we are able to tamper that value, and if we are able to change the threshold value, threshold temperature to something else, uh, that this might be something disastrous to the entire solution. So that is how tampering works. And then encryption attacks. So encryption attacks is, as the name suggests, so encryption attacks mainly try to decipher the encrypted communication, and this might be using normal brute force methods or some sophisticated mechanisms. So it involves password cracking, breaking the encryption, etc. So one such tool used, as I've already mentioned, Crackle. Crackle is one such tool used for encryption attacks. And the next one is jamming. Okay, so what is jamming? Jamming, as the name suggests, so here what happens is an attacker, this can happen in two ways. Randomly an attacker can jam a connection, or second way is he can plan it in a more specified way. So what happens in jamming is an attacker randomly sends data on different channels. So as we've already discussed, there are 40 channels for communication. So an attacker randomly sends data into these channels, and the main agenda of the attacker here is to keep the channel busy, so that no legitimate user can use the channel for his or her communication. So so attacker can do it in different ways. So one is just randomly block send data to all the channels and block the communication for legitimate users. Or the second one would be properly study the determine the hopping pattern. So what hopping pattern is being used in a communication, and then come up. So we need to know the algorithms and all those stuffs used in that particular standard to know the hopping pattern, and then jam the communication. And the last one is the denial of service. So denial of service, as the name suggests, so this is an attack. So this attack achieves its purpose by flooding the connections with malformed packets or malformed connection or service requests. So this flooding of requests, what happens is the flooding hogs the entire bandwidth of a particular servicing node in the target network. So this will cause the disruption of service to genuine incoming requests from various clients. So it basically stops. So it basically sends malformed packets, which the device will not be able to process, and it causes a denial of service. So one of the scenarios may be the device may be completely shut down. So in that case, the other clients or other central devices cannot connect to that particular device. So that was all about a few of the common attacks used that can be seen in Bluetooth Low Energy. So speaking about Bluetooth 5.0, so if we buy any of the Bluetooth devices these days, so it specification says Bluetooth 5. So we've already reached Bluetooth 5.1 and 5.2 in 2019. So how is it different from whatever we discussed? So the thing is, feature wise, it has a better speed and better range. Apart from that, at the physical layer, it has implemented, the structure of the physical layer is slightly different from 4.0 and 4.1. So it has implemented two different physical layers. One is mainly used to increase the throughput and better to provide a better range of communication. And the next one is the channel selection algorithm differs from whatever is used in 4.0, 1 and 2. So it uses a more randomized hopping schemes for communication. So the main reason for because since the physical layer is slightly different in structure uh, from Bluetooth 4.0 and 4.1, whatever the devices we discussed here may not be used in sniffing or attacking Bluetooth 5.0. So we don't have complete hardware capability for Bluetooth 5.0, but uh, till now the attacks that have been seen, the only attacks that have been seen on Bluetooth 5.0 is sniffing and jamming is possible. So because of the unavailability of the hardware, so full support of the hardware is not present. That's why the other attack patterns are still not prevalent in Bluetooth 5.0 except sniffing and jamming. So that was all about Bluetooth and its specifications, security mechanisms, etc. So now let us have a quick demonstration on one of the scenarios. So what we'll be doing is, so okay, let me switch my. So what we'll be doing in this demonstration is, so this is a very classic example of a Bluetooth attack scenario, which few of you might already know it. So unfortunately, I could not come across any other Bluetooth device to show demonstration on. So here we have a BLE enabled device on which we'll be trying an attack scenario that is tampering. So we'll see how an unauthenticated user or an attacker can remotely control this Bluetooth low energy device, and he can so basically what the actual perform the actual function of this Bluetooth low energy device BLE bulb is that, so we have an application called as we have an application for this both in Android and Apple, so which is mainly used to control this bulb. So you can switch on. Hello.
Yes, yes, you're
uh,
audible.
yeah, okay. So the what the app does is it is mainly used for switching on, switching off your bulb, and it also provides features to play around with various colors, etc. So so that is the legitimate use case of this device. So the use case which so the attack pattern which we will be seeing now is an attacker, any attacker who is in the range of this bulb can connect to this device without any authentication, and he can remotely control this device. So let us get started with the demonstration. So I'm just sharing the other screen. So the setup is very simple. So I'm using something called as Ubuntu. Okay, let me show it to you. So this is yeah. So this is the device. So one of the devices we discussed that is called as Ubuntu, which is used for sniffing the communication and also tampering the data. Uh, so it's an open source tool widely available. So I've just connected it to my Kali machine. So what I'm doing now is, so yes, so what we do is, so we check if the interface on which we are working is up or not. So now I have already configured the Ubuntu, so it is up and running. So we can go ahead with the next step. So as you can see, the state of the bulb is on, and it is the color of the bulb is green. I'm not very sure if it is actually yeah, I don't know if you can distinguish between the colors, but let's see. So now what happens is I'll be scanning for all the devices in the network, and I'll see if the BLE device is advertising its availability to the devices. So so yes, so we have a lot of devices, the low energy devices in the range, and here is our LED bulb that we'll be using for this demonstration. So we have the MAC ID of the device or the access address as already discussed. So this is used to connect with the device. So the next thing what we'll be doing is so now we know that the BLE bulb is advertising itself and we know the MAC ID. So we'll try connecting with this ID. We'll try connecting to the device and let's see what happens. So we'll be using the DAT tool here as already mentioned. So as we can see, we have successfully connected to the device. So one thing to be noted here is, so based on the pairing mechanisms we have discussed, so it is very evident that it is using the pairing mechanism that is just works. So we have not done anything. We have just connected. So we are successfully able to connect it, and then now the next thing that we would do is we'll try and see what are the services and characteristics that it is using. So we'll try and check the services available. So yes, so it gives us a various handles. So a lot of services are running between the handle 1 to handle 7, handle 8 to handle 9 to B, and so it gives all the services and characteristics within this. So now let's see what is there between 9 to B. So yes, we can see there are so these handles between uh, 9A and B, and each of these handles or services have unique identifiers which is represented by UUIDs. So now let's try and check what is there in 0009. Okay, so it is giving some. So this is the characteristic, and it is giving some value, which seems to be very random. So one thing that needs to be noted here is, so how do we know what characteristic is representing what feature in this bulb, or what characteristic represents what feature in any of the BLE devices we are analyzing. So that mainly depends on, that requires a lot of trial and error methods. So and that requires a reverse engineering process of the packets that are being communicated between the devices. So initially, what exactly needs to be done is, so you perform a lot of operation between the legitimate application to with your end device, and you randomly sniff the packets and go on analyzing the packet sequence, how it is changing. So a little bit of reverse engineering is required to come to a conclusion that, okay, so this is the handle that is taking care of the color of the bulb. So this is the handle that is taking care of the state of the bulb, whether it's on or off. So that I've already done it. So for the sake of for time concerns, so we'll not go into that detail, but you can use the tools mentioned to capture the Wireshark, to take Wireshark captures and analyze the communication. So now, okay, so we have read some handle. So we'll see what is in handle A. Okay, so handle A also is giving some value to us. So we'll see what is there in B. So it says characteristic value or descriptor read failed, attribute can't be read. So this is a clue that, okay, this is not a read attribute, so it might be a write attribute. So write attributes are something which we need to focus on because we are trying to tamper the communication. So after reverse engineering, we come to a conclusion that B is the handle which is taking care of the state of the bulb and colors of the bulb. So now the next step would be to change the state of the bulb. So let's write to this characteristic value and see if the value changes or if the state of the bulb changes. Okay, so okay, I have taken a note of what is the sequence that is coming after the Wireshark handle. So now, as we can see, the BLE is in the on state. So let us try to switch it off. Okay, so it says characteristic value returned successfully. And how did we get this sequence? Again, that needs to be done. That will come to know after we get a few packet captures, analyze packets, and we perform a little bit of reverse engineering. And so now we have successfully changed the state of the device. So now let's again turn it on. So we need to get the turn on sequence which the device is using, which was found to be this. So as you can see, the state of the device is changed, and it has changed from off to on. Now let us see if we can change the color of the device. So after from the PCAP, it was evident that the second, third, and fourth byte are taking care of the color of the bulb. So let us say it is so the sequence is like red, green, and blue. So RR, BB, and GG. So let us say we are giving RR as FF, blue, and G as 00. So as we can see, we have changed the color of the bulb to red. So let's see. So we can try for some secondary colors also. RRB we have changed, so it has changed to yellow. So that is how an unauthenticated access to a BLE device can be done, and tampering attack can be performed. So that was all about a quick demonstration, and that brings us to the end of the session. So that was all from my side. So if you have any questions, I guess we are 4 minutes late. So.
Thank you so much, Renu, for the amazing talk in perspective of Bluetooth security on how we attain privacy and encryption and various common attacks we would face in BLT, along with the demo that you gave us right now. So I'll let the participants ask you questions. So if you have any, please do post them in the chat. So we do have a couple of questions. One is that what do you think are the security challenges in particular with cyber attacks that are still not solved in BLE devices?
Yeah, that's what. So we see most of the devices still using a just works mechanism or a normal pairing mechanism where two-way authentication is not implemented. So it's just using six character passwords. So this is still prevalent. But again, this is also one of the this is also like one reason for using them might be the application where it is being used. So if they see even after cracking the device, cracking the passwords. So if no important data is being breached, so in that case, they like developers still go ahead with these primitive mechanisms of authentication or pairing. But one recommended suggestion would be if the application is critical, then and if BLE is not providing enough security for the data that is being handled in the solution, it is better to look at other wireless standards.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question. Doesn't most of our common technology use just pairing method? For example, wireless headsets and mobile phones to vehicles. So why do you think mainstream technology hasn't moved forward, like in passkey or out of band pairing methods?
Yeah, again, whatever I said previously is implemented here also. So it is seen how see if we have something called as something like fit bands or something like that. So there it is required to have a better communication, better pairing mechanism, or more secure way of pairing mechanism, because it is monitoring heart rate or something more critical data. But for speakers and stuffs like that, so it is so the data is not that critical. And okay, if your device so if your device is down for some time, also you can again reboot your device and get the communication back. So it is mainly based on the criticality of the application, I would say. And out of band might not be feasible. So in some of the cases, so usually developers don't choose out of band technologies, even though that is present as a part of the standard.
Okay.
Yes, we can do the
And
same
we have
demo
one
in.
more last. Yeah, can we do the
Yes.
same demo
So
with mobile Bluetooth?
yes, you can give it a try. We can do it, but it would be a little complicated it yeah, you have to do all, because complication comes in the reverse engineering part of the device. So if the device is uh, so you need to sit and reverse engineer the protocol and check what values you're changing and stuffs like that, and then you'll be able to perform it. Yeah, you can give it a try.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Renu, for answering all the questions our participants has posted so patiently. And so I would like to once again thank you on behalf of our Shaktikon team, as well as on behalf of Ramada University. So thank you so much for spending some of your time with us today.
Thank you, Purnima, and thank you for the opportunity given to speak at ShaktiCon. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.